I guess things started going bad for my marriage was when I just started neglecting. I guess I was so involved with everything. I wanted to do everything ministry-wise. I wanted to, you know, I thought that if I was busy for God 24/7, that would be the thing to do. And what I ended up being was this oppressive type, legalistic Bible thumper, not only with my friends, but my family.
Basically, we went through probably 9 years of being married together where it was very difficult, very difficult. We had our fun times because, you know, you do, but there was a lot of unresolved. Well, for one thing, my heart wasn't right with the Lord, and that was obviously the main issue there.
And I remember thinking, you know, God, you have to straighten this out. This is, I can't fix this. I was always fixing things. I can't fix this one. And I just didn't think there was any hope at the time. I know God could heal, and I know God can do anything, but, you know, when it comes to changing a person the way they think, unless they're not receptive to that, I thought it was hopeless. I really did. And I remember thinking, there was a song by a gospel singer named Freddie Hammonds. And one of the lines were like, late in the midnight hour, God's going to turn it around, and it's going to work in your favor. I remember used to always holding on to that, but then thinking, nah, not this time. There's just no way. We finally got a divorce, and I remember thinking, you failed, I failed. I have my family, my kids. It just tore me apart. I was a failure. And I looked at God and I said, you failed me too.
I think really it was probably the power of prayer, because I felt like my heart changed like quick. And I looked at everything and I thought, what did I do? I made a mess of everything. I've affected people's lives even beyond my own immediate family. And just that I took every biblical principle of marriage and tossed it aside for the sake of my own self. And I realized that I needed to, first and foremost, I needed to get right with God. I was able to look at everything in a different light, almost as if like the blinders were lifted, and I was shown what I was missing. You know, I was missing that whole, you know, knowing that Christ died for me, and just, you know, letting go of all the pride and letting go of so many things that I had. And I looked at everything, and I talked to Willie about it, and basically I knew that the right thing to do was to get my family back together. So I did everything I could to get us back together.
When you're in the midst of a crisis, sometimes you forget what his word says. You know, there's hope. And I saw God changing the both of us. I saw God changing Jill and changing myself. And even though I was very guarded, you know, even though she was very guarded, you know, we knew what needed to be done. And God really, you know, put that feeling back into both of us. We were seeing one another, knowing that we needed to get back together. And just as fast as we divorced, we got remarried.
After we got remarried, there was definitely no honeymoon after that. It was hard. It was very hard, because now you're throwing in emotions of bitterness and anger and unforgiveness, which is huge, and no trust.
I was still very apprehensive about being too close to God. And God knows how to get my attention. And that attention was a little later in the fall. There was a crisis we had with, you know, at home. And I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. and I knew we needed help. And I told Jill, you got to call somebody, a counselor, a therapist. I was scared, and I go, just don't call a pastor, because I'm not into that right now. I'm not into that at all.
And Willie said to me, and I'll never forget this, he said in the living room, I don't care who you call, but don't you dare call a pastor. Because we still weren't in church at all. We were so far from God. And the first thing I did was go into the office and call Sue Whiting, the pastor's wife.
So she came back, I go, who'd you call? She goes, I called Pastor Whiting, or Sue. I'm like, I just told you not to call a pastor.
One day, shortly before Christmas, I got a phone call from Jill, and she was real quiet, and I could tell she was upset, and she said they had a crisis, and they were wondering if David and I would come over. And so I said, sure, just let me call David. He's Christmas shopping. And as soon as David got home, we went over and just to see what we could do to help them.
Whenever a situation like that happens, I always think about if God's bringing a crisis in their life, it's probably bigger than the crisis. And so I went in there with that mindset. And so we were able to talk about the crisis and tried to help them specifics on what to do with that situation. But as soon as I could, I turned it toward what God might be doing in their lives.
After he left, I knew that I had to do something. I knew that was the time. I knew God had rattled my cage, and he had enough of my. I think God was, his grace was, he didn't wink an eye to sin. He just went, I know where you're at, Willie, and enough. You need to come back. And this is where I need you. This is where you need to be.
In the middle of that mess, God just did a miracle, got my marriage back together, and got our family back in church where we belong, with fellow Christians. Just, everybody's trying to struggle through their things, but you have people to go through them with you. And I feel like we're grounded. We're on the right track. And everybody in the family is finding their place in this church.
It's not going to happen overnight. I'm okay with that. I know that. I really believe it is a lifelong process. I used to say that years ago. It's a lifelong process. I never really believed that. I believe that, hey, I'm changed and this is great. But there's things that God wants to deal with, and a lot deeper things. And I believe he dealt with a lot of those things in my heart. And I know that there's a lot more to come. So I just kind of look around the corner going, hopefully it doesn't hurt too much.